Hey everybody. Before we get rolling with this week's podcast, we wanted to take a brief moment to show support for the people all over the United States putting themselves at risk in the aftermath of the murder of George Floyd to combat our country's legacy of racism and police brutality. While individual acts and broad systems of oppression and injustice are nothing new in our country, it is important to speak out against them, support those combating them, and combat them ourselves. This is especially true in those moments when unambiguous acts of evil prick the conscience of the nation and spur the population toward demanding necessary change. The responsibility lies with each of us to do what we can, and in that vein, we'd like to encourage our listeners to protest if they are able to protest, donate if they are able to donate, and speak out whenever necessary against the oppression perpetrated by our police, our politicians, and our leaders, past, present, and future. We've included in the show notes some links to resources to help you get active and engaged. Thanks for bearing with us, and now, please enjoy our latest episode with special guest, Anthony Marefat.
Hello everybody and welcome to Is This Pinball, the only podcast brave enough to ask you, is this pinball? And then also a little bit after, how pinball is it? And maybe even after that, what even is pinball? I'm your host, Willie Caldwell, and with me as always are my co-hosts, Amy Langer.
Hello.
And Dylan Waite.
Hello.
And today we have an actual pinball designer, a real gearhead who makes the machines from scratch himself, Anthony Marefat. How you doing today, Anthony?
Oh, so good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So, how's the pinball business treating you?
Oh, man, I wish I knew. I don't do anything involving pinball for work.
You don't do any of those things that I just said?
No. I've been in the room
man.
with those people. You know.
I really goofed it then.
I've been misled.
Yeah, you know.
Well, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, Anthony?
Sure. I am a programmer by trade, but games are mostly where I live. That's kind of what I was studying in parallel. It was a lot of game design stuff, and got connected to the New York indie crowd. I've been working with a nonprofit called Death by Audio, which builds arcade cabinets and places them around the city, usually made by local designers and the like. And through that, I've ended up at a couple of different events where the people you probably wanted to interview were there, people that fabricated pinball machines. They take them apart, build them from scratch, talk about them on the internet for fun. And I've been in the room with them. I didn't really ask them much, but I think I've got a pretty good sense of. I do feel like I am the authority on pinball, though. So.
And also, I don't actually want to talk to those guys because they sound weird. They sound like the video game equivalent of noise musicians who wear smelly t-shirts and big key rings and turn a bunch of knobs.
I'm impressed with how
it's
accurate.
Like that, but for video games.
Yeah, you're not wrong. They are absolutely key ring wearing dudes. They also, I didn't feel especially welcome to come ask them about pinball. The air about a lot of them I got was they're. They've been the sergeant on the battlefield for a long time, and I'm some new guy coming in here, and I'm probably going to ask them a million dumb questions, and they don't have time for it because they're on another plane of pinball existence.
They're like, you don't know what the ball is made of? Pshaw.
Yeah.
They're all smoking 5 cigarettes at once. They all have a scar over their left eye. They've seen things.
Well, that answers my question as to whether the L.A. noise rock outfit Harry Pussy is pinball or not, and it turns out they're 5 out of 5.
So we've already solved our first pinball mystery of the day. Let's jump into our second. Who wants to go first?
I'll kick it off. Anthony and I live close to each other in this fine part of New York that we live in, and although further now, if you know what I mean. because of quarantine. But I really wanted to get Anthony to come on the show because most of my most interesting ideas about video games are either from conversations we've had or just things that Anthony you've said that I just then aped. So in that spirit, this week I brought a game you recommended to me a long time ago, and I never tried it. And then last night I told Bea about it, and she immediately downloaded it, and we're playing it all night. And that is the phone game Reigns. So
How do you spell that?
like Kings, Reigns, Reigns. It's sort of like Tinder for monarchs. It pulls up some member of your royal entourage or some such thing, and they'll give you a problem or ask you a question, and you will have give me 1 second. No, it's okay. We got someone at the door.
Ooh, special delivery.
Special delivery. It's my book about the CIA murdering communists.
The Jakarta method?
Yeah, absolutely, the Jakarta method.
Are you going to review that in Pinballs or not?
Nah, next thing I'm reviewing is Cicero.
Okay.
So Reigns, you'll members of your court will bring you problems, questions, ideas, and you can respond to them with either a left swipe or a right swipe. And before you swipe, it'll show you without response and show its effect on your kingdom. There are 4 categories of your kingdom that can be affected: the church, the army, the people, and the treasury. And so each one, you'll know the magnitude of its effect, but not whether it's positive or negative. And if any of the one areas is drained completely, you are murdered by the people or cast out of the kingdom or some such thing ends your reign. And each reign starts, every category is at 50%, but the effects on the kingdom are cumulative. So if you create a separation of this church into what is a stand-in for the Anglican and the Catholic churches, that continues down into the reign of the next person. And it's pretty easy. The gameplay mechanics are simple, but it's very fun, and it's pretty good storytelling for like a $2 phone game. But yeah, it's a lot of fun.
So it's not free to play? It has like are there in-game transactions or whatever?
No.
Transactions?
No, it's one
Good,
purchase.
because that sticks in my craw, man.
Oh, absolutely. And our horny Japanese correspondent will have something to say about microtransactions pretty soon. But it's a fun little game that lets you feel like what it's like to be a monarch. Turns out morality doesn't really come into play all that often.
Dylan, it's surprising
Is
me
it
that
like...
this is the one game that, like, in our Venn diagram of games that we play, this is the one game it seems that we both actually have played and both actually have enjoyed. I wouldn't have expected this one to be the one, but I'm glad that it is.
It's great. It's a good time. It's good for one person, because like Bea and I have been trading off, so it really feels like you have different kings ruling with different personalities. Because my phone is broken, so we're just using the one phone. But yeah, it's been a great time, and I don't give a shit. 2 out of 5 pinballs, who cares?
I think that's a pretty good rating.
Because things go back and forth like pinball, and that's about it. Oh, I guess there's a left and a right element, so let's bump it on up to our fan favorite 3 out of 5 pinballs.
The score that everything gets if we don't want to think about it too hard. And Lord knows I don't.
That's great.
This game sounds really interesting. Do they have the one case where the women are fighting over bread and then the king splits it in half and then they bring a baby and then they splits the baby in half? Is that in there, or is that DLC? Or can we see that sometime soon?
Yeah, the
Solomon.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah, Willie, you're making one of your classic biblical allusions. I don't know that specific instance is in there, but things coming very close to it do happen.
Neat.
And usually the most morally fucked thing you can do is the one that's the best for your kingdom. So it's fun to experiment with that. And then based on your decisions, you can get titles if you unlock certain achievements.
Yeah, the thing that else
I love this game.
I can't remember. Are there like through lines through it? Like, so the way that it looks when you're playing it is it looks like a deck of cards that you're swiping left and right through as you're making decisions. But I can't remember. Do characters return? Like, are there things that you like? Are there through lines that develop? It's been a hot minute since I've played the game.
Yeah. Infrastructure that gets built carries over. If you like, for example, I discovered basically an analog for Jesus Christ, and that added him to the deck, and so this prophet kept popping up. So it does carry over. Anthony, you were saying that you love this game. Give us a little something about it.
I do love this game. I think its greatest success, it has a lot of successes, but to me, one of the biggest impact it left was its fantastic sense of like scope for the player. Playing it on a phone, I think in one of your recent episodes, you were talking about how much you disliked playing games on a phone, and even more so on a bigger screen. And I think I'm much the same way. And the nice thing about this is that it you don't really resent the screen size at all. You can drop in, drop out super easily. Everybody is really practiced at swiping now, and it's like it's a really low ask and a really big payoff, which is kind of one of my favorite kind of classifications for interactive. When you don't have to brace yourself, you don't have to like set up and allocate a bunch of time and like get your head into that world, and it's drop in, drop out, and but not meaningless. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I think it's really tidy. They really aimed for maximum output from the scope, the tiny screen, and the tiny ask from the player.
Right. It
Yeah.
feels like a certain sort of end game for resource allocation games. Like, I feel like it can really go, like, I've been playing a game called King of Dragon Pass, which is a game wherein you are the leader of a small tribe of individuals. And it is incredibly complex in terms of everything you have to keep an eye on and manage in terms of what resources you have coming in and out. And I feel like Reigns specifically sees like the joy of resource allocation, like the long-term planning of it, and realize that you didn't actually need to keep adding more things. You could in fact break it down to its most core elements, which I believe are just like those 4 different, like again, they're kind of emotional resources within the game, like in terms of what elements of your kingdom are pleased or not pleased. And there's something about like that simplification that is really optimistic to me in terms of game development. Like, you don't need to necessarily create these huge, sprawling, like terribly involved resourcing that require like 20 different like wiki articles to figure out what each one means. It can be something that's really easily read across a small screen.
Absolutely.
And one of the more impressive kind of takeaways that I feel like most people get as a result of that is this sense, this understanding that power rules through you. You're the king, but in order to proceed, in order to not lose this game, this life, you're appeasing, you're just managing, you're doing that resource management, and that keeping your interested parties happy. So it's you definitely, I mean, I never felt like I was a number one, big boss just saying how things are going to go. It was a real delicate balancing act, which is a really impressive takeaway for a mobile game where you swipe left and right,
Right.
to instill that in a player.
A
is
mobile
like,
game that humbles you.
yeah, exactly.
Which is funny because the mechanic is so similar to Tinder, which is one of the least humbling experiences, where you play God and judge everyone
Well,
for every
depends on
defect.
who you are.
And no, it's just it's a geometrical arms race. But no, I mean,
Yeah, you went on a whole thing about symmetry.
yeah, no,
Anyway,
no.
continue.
Sexual attraction is just geometry. It's that that picture of the
Fucking Tom Stoppard, just like bullshit.
no, that image of
Hate
the
it.
woman in she's looking quizzical and there's all the math in front of her. That's an erection. But
This whole time.
Okay.
but I guess one of the things I wanted to bring up or just bounce off something you said, Anthony, which was that it's the payoff is so great for how little input it requires. I've been trying to find a good like successor to like the Baldur's Gates and the Planescapes that isn't Divinity Original Sin 2, which is a perfect game. And every time I put one in, whether it's Pillars of Eternity or Wasteland 2 or like I even tried like Mountain Blade, which I know isn't the same, but like there's such a wall of text that confronts you at the top, and stats. You have to allocate the stats yourself, and that affects the skills, which affects your feats, and it's like I don't want to fucking do all that. And this game,
It's tricky.
No, go ahead.
It's tricky, you know. It's a tricky thing to land, because ultimately, I feel like the type of games you're describing, in my opinion, you know, all the work they're going through is to kind of set the scaffolding for you to feel special at some point, for decisions you made many hours ago to be suddenly relevant, celebrated, or lamented. They have to really give you agency in a lot of ways for that to come back later and you to feel like that was a result of your actions and not just forced upon you by text. The downside is, you know, that it's a meat-fisted approach. You know, if you want something to be special, you need to give the player agency, so they give you so much agency, but in order to keep you on track, they have to explain everything, and so the overhead is so high.
Yeah.
To achieve that payoff, and that's really, you know, mastering the low input, high output that's a special kind of art.
Right. It's the reason I've never been able to play The Witcher 3. I've tried multiple times to get into it, and then I get into like the inventory management, and I just can't. Like, I just feel exhausted and need to lay down.
I know exactly how you feel. I didn't know I loved that game until near the end. Some weird momentum was keeping me going. It was a real afterthought of like, oh, this is very good, but the overhead was real steep, and I did not get it for a while too. There was a time I think I played through half that game without the awareness that like potions come back, so I was going into like dungeons and stuff and being like, oh my god, a pickle, yes. And like that was how I would heal.
Though honestly,
Just
I
That's
kind
how
of
I
like
feel
that
in
version
real
of
life
game.
when I open the fridge.
Yeah.
And we had such different experiences because I played until I was able to fuck every character you can fuck, and then I settled down playing the card game for about 2 days, and then I was done.
Yeah, we had
Becomes
different
a life
experiences.
Fantasy card simulator.
I just want to be a boozing gambler that frequents the whorehouses. Where's that simulator? You know, just
I feel like there's a fair amount of those.
guy who
I don't
ruined
think you
his
have to-
life.
Background tavern character sim. Like,
Yeah. Oh, Anthony, like that tavern game you showed me.
Oh, I knew you were gonna bring this up. Oh no.
what's this?
Well, come on, tell us about it.
I mean, it's hard to describe. I'll open with the universe it lands in, which is for people who enjoy role-playing games and experiences. There's this specific subset. I'm sure they have like a name, or this phenomenon has some sort of classification. But the joy is not in you sort of playing the role of the hero or the chosen one or a concerned citizen, whatever, like going about the adventure. You instead opt to play like an innkeeper for whom the hero or the party like travels by. You like chop carrots real well for their dinner, and you serve it to them, and then they like leave to go have the adventure, but you stay at the inn. You're a background character that just exists for like the briefest moment. And this is a whole discipline of like role-playing enjoyment for people that I just don't get.
Video game or tabletop?
Yeah, there are games, there are video games, and there are like live action role playing instances of it. The game Dylan was raising was a video game. I think we had seen trailers for that involves you managing a tavern, and it looked super complicated for the player.
Yeah,
it's just balancing books.
It's medieval pub tycoon.
I mean, I understand the appeal of that. Like, I probably wouldn't sit down to play that game, but like the meta narrative of being the innkeeper and having that be gamified in the same way that like being the champion is inherently kind of funny, and I could see people getting enjoyment from that. Like, I don't know.
Definitely. I could see it more in the live action world than in the video game world, because it seems to me like if you could slip into that role with minimal overhead, it could be fun. You know, it could have its moments, but to make like a management game around it, it's like where's the payoff though? I don't know. I don't get it.
The king visits and he gives you like an elk horn, and that's the payoff. You get like a boar tusk to drink out of or something.
The like quick time events or like
You get to leave the business to your children.
shaving potatoes. Timed it super well. Good boil, you know.
Well, this brings it back to Reigns, right? Because like Reigns lets you go back and look at every reign that's taken place since you started playing the game, and there's long ones and short ones, and people with titles, and people who achieved things, and buildings get built and destroyed, and like they're even. At the end of it all, the payoff is not just in the experience, but in looking back and seeing this little like history you've written for yourself.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right.
So Reigns, 3 out of 5 pinballs in a good way. I might actually check this game out. You've sold me.
It's great. I can't recommend it highly enough.
All right. Let's see. What else do we got on the table? The pinball table.
Hey-o.
I'll bring a game.
All right.
Because of I realized that I've been like leaning back on games that are kind of like my game equivalent of comfort food, like things that I've played a ton of times before that I know are going to like bring me some element of joy. And in that vein, the pinball table I'm bringing today is the original Portal game by Valve, released in 2007 as part of the Orange Box. I assume that literally everyone is familiar with Portal, but for the sake of convenience, I'm going to pretend that they're not. Portal was a game that, as I mentioned, was included as part of like a 3-game package that the video game developer Valve put out. The Orange Box included one of the Half-Life 2 episodes, Team Fortress 2, and Portal. And I assume that the whole thing was packaged together as kind of an apology for the fact that Half-Life was very slow to come out and never actually finished. But as an addition, so Portal is a game in which you are a character who wakes up in a testing facility, and the only companion you have is this disembodied robotic voice that is guiding you through various testing chambers. And these testing chambers are just 3D puzzles for you to solve. It's just a 3D puzzle game wherein you have access to a portal gun that can fire off a blue and an orange portal. You fire off the blue portal, you move through it, you go through the orange portal ends, and you use those portals to solve the puzzles. So you need to press buttons at certain times. There are timed elements. When you go through portals, it preserves your velocity, so if you need to catapult yourself across a space, you can jump from a high location into a portal and rocket out through another portal that you've placed higher up. It's very satisfying, but the reason that the game became so beloved was because the writing for it was pretty spectacular, especially for the time. I'm just going to go into spoilers because, again, this game is over 10 years old, so if you haven't played it, just skip forward until you don't hear me just yelling about it anymore, and you'll be good. About halfway through the game, you realize that the disembodied robotic voice that's been leading you through this experiment, that there's just something amiss. you can see all of these different rooms up above where people would be watching the testing go on, but there's no one in those rooms. The voice makes various allusions to like bring your daughter to work day, like being an excellent time to have your daughters tested, donating various limbs to science. You get dropped into a room with live turrets. There's just things that seem kind of amiss. And eventually, at the end of the testing, you are about to be incinerated by the AI that's controlling the whole facility, and you manage to make a break for it, only to realize that the AI has actually poisoned everyone who was in the facility years prior, so you're the only one left alive. Her name is GLaDOS, and she just wants mostly everyone dead, but especially you. And the reason that I continue to love this game is because enough time has passed that all of the memes that came about after it have faded into memory. So all of like the kicking of a dead horse of the cake is a lie meme has like faded from the internet.
Don't
for
be
the most
so
part.
sure.
I mean, we are just primed for a resurgence. But there was like
I think
a
I was
brief,
playing
there
a
was
game
a
the
not
other
brief.
day.
Well,
It
I
pops
guess
up a
some
lot in
folks are keeping the
games.
torch alive. That's true. It becomes like this weird meta echo through games. They're like, hey, remember this thing you liked? If we reference it, that's also funny, correct? And the answer is no, it's not. But the thing that I play this game every once in a while, and on one of my recent playthroughs, one of the things that I started to develop as my own pet theory is that GLaDOS, the AI, is kind of this physical embodiment of like all the terrible things a woman says to herself. The reason I think this is because the character you play is Shell, who is a woman, and is notably mute throughout the entire game. Kind of in the Valve way. Gordon Freeman in Half-Life doesn't speak, Shell doesn't speak. It's a thing they have going. But GLaDOS throughout especially when she takes a turn towards like being from being implicitly evil to being explicitly like malicious towards the player, a lot of the things that she says towards Shell are very gendered in terms of eliciting blame and guilt, and also comments about her weight a lot of the time. There's this very specific like female animosity between the two, in a way that just evokes a certain sort of there's something like deep inside me that I'm like, oh, these are the things that I say to myself when I feel bad about myself, but they're a robot in a video game. Additionally, like I've been really fascinated by AI systems, mostly because of the popular conception that robots are somehow without any sort of bias because they are robots and therefore impartial, when actually, since we train robots, we actually just put our own biases into them. So, there's the various AIs that were built and deployed that then had to be shut down because they became like, racism spewing robots, because they were taking in a whole bunch of language, and people put in a bunch of racist language. And so guess what? They output racist language.
That's because they put them on Twitter.
Yeah, that was a mistake. But even then, like, there's the things about like AIs just like with language being put in them that even if it's not like so explicitly terrible, there are AIs that have like that will continue to. I mean, I guess one example would be like hand dryers. Like hand dryers, they realized weren't recognizing darker skin tones because they'd only trained it on lighter skin tones, because the majority of scientists who were building these machines were folks with lighter skin. So because it was built by people who didn't realize their own internal biases, or they just didn't realize that was a mistake that could be made, the thing that was supposed to do the thing it was supposed to do couldn't actually do it to the entire population. So it would make sense to me to have a robot in a game that would be like the embodiment of like all the like just like the compilation of these terrible things. But anyway, it's a very good game. It continues to be good. I started replaying it again this morning. The first game takes an hour. They came out with a second one, which is fine, but they made the mistake of trying to make it longer and like purposefully funnier, which kind of lost the magic of the original, which was the fact that it was such a surprise that it was funny and good, when it was supposed to be kind of like a nothing throwaway game. Also, one of the lead developers on it is a woman named Kim Swift, and just I assume that if there's like, what a novel thing to have like a female lead developer for a game that's become such a big thing. So, anyway, Portal itself, I think, could probably get up to about 4 out of 5 pinballs, just in terms of the fact that it relies so heavily on like careening yourself off, around, and through things, and having a knowledge of like how to time things and how to how to like time your portals and how to this is where I lose the thread every single time.
Well, and you fail a lot. At least I did when I was playing the game.
Oh, totally.
You like,
absolutely
lose a lot of balls. Thank God it doesn't take your quarters.
And in my forever, what I always pin pinball to, there are indeed secret rooms that you can go into. And it has a jingle that it plays pretty much throughout, which is a more jingly version of the song that plays over the end credits. So all in all,
that sounds pretty pinball to me.
It's actually surprisingly pinball, which makes sense because I think that there's like an FX3 pinball table that's Portal, if I remember right, that I also meant to download, but I did not do. But I think, Dylan, you said it was not very good, so...
I haven't played that one, but I heard it wasn't good.
It feels to me like something that someone, like similar to repeating "the cake is a lie" as an internet meme, that when you put it on a pinball table, perhaps it doesn't actually work super well. But yeah, Portals...
Yeah, nobody needs that. Nobody
Just
needs a
replay the
Portal
original
pinball
game.
table.
But it does seem to lend itself well to pinball. So 4 out of 5 pinballs is where I'll land.
I approve of that rating as the pinball emperor.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Makes a lot of sense in pinball terms.
Surprisingly,
but
pinball was a great descriptor.
I actually thought that, what you said was really interesting, Amy. I had definitely not considered that element of Portal. And it also makes me really miss when Valve made games. That was a cool thing that they used to do.
Hey, they technically did just do it again.
Made a money printer.
Well, they just came out with...
They did, but I don't have
Alex.
a VR.
I know. No one does. Unless you're like willing to invest... Don't you need like their specific VR rig in order to do it as well? Like, isn't it a very specific buy-in of just $1,000 in order to play the game?
Less and less,
Yeah.
but present day, still technically, yes, for Half-Life Alyx, you would still need a pretty beastly computer to pull that off. But not for long. VR headsets are starting to have onboard computing power, so
Hey.
already we have like just standalone units, so the dream of living alone and never going out and just existing in your pixel universe is well on its way.
The future
A
we were
standalone
promised.
Helping
unit.
to make that happen.
A standalone unit is a dildo with a suction cup on the back.
Oh my god. See, this is you get this nice, beautiful, thoughtful commentary about a very wonderful video game from Amy, and then it just cuts back to these idiots being like, "Yo, you ever think about a dildo? Oh man, that
The problem
shit's
was I could
funny,
see
dog."
the joke coming from 10 miles away, and it's just slow approach was...
But that's because you set it up. If you're gonna throw it up, don't be surprised when I dunk it in the hoop.
Didn't know standalone unit was an alley-oop for dildo jokes.
Well, I don't really have much to say about Portal. I mean, you pretty much covered it, Langer. Good work.
Yeah, sorry.
Surprisingly pinball.
Anybody else?
Surprisingly
Thoughts on
pinball.
Portal?
I would like to just jump on your criticism of Portal 2, which, suffered from what's been killing the Fire Emblem series for the last 10 years, which is too much fan service.
Yeah.
J.K. Simmons, Stephen Merchant, fun, don't need it, took up too much space. The pivot of the villain to a sympathetic character, it all felt very like, here's your slop, you little hoggies.
You love this. You love it. Eat up. Yum yum. Yeah. It does. There is something sort of patronizing about Portal 2.
Yeah,
It's
it feels like they.
Valve in general lately.
I mean, that's kind of like Gabe Newell's whole thing, is being somehow both benevolent and the biggest troll. Just like, it's somehow like very concentrated on like Steam/Valve in terms of its continued existence, and also just like tossing scraps to the people who are just waiting in the wings, which is kind of how I feel about Alex. Part of me is kind of excited about it because I do like that it's like a behemoth of a company that has so much money that they literally don't care if the game does well. You know, like they didn't need it to sell, you know, however many copies, as far as I can tell, because like there's again such a big buy-in. But also at the same time, they're like, we just felt like making a VR game, so that's what we did. Like there's something that's kind of a power move about it in a way that I respect, and I also resent it. So it's been. I have a lot of feelings towards Valve as a company, I guess.
I mean, you're describing
Yeah.
sort of the Elon Musk business model too.
Oh, totally.
Which, by the way, you'll see that rocket go up into space, go fly.
Oh no, I literally.
No, but I saw
No.
the other one explode, and that was dope.
What?
The SpaceX exploded a rocket by accident, but nobody was hurt. And apparently they do that all the time. You know, you got to do like 1 billion tests before you can have a successful launch. But it was cool. It went boom, real big. I saw it. The explosion looked like when I was at a Kiss concert and I could feel the heat when the pyrotechnics went off, but on my phone, so I couldn't feel the heat, but I would have liked to.
Should we keep this train a moving?
Yeah, let's go on. Play Portal. It's one of the classic games, and it could probably run on like whatever computer you have.
Oh yeah.
Too.
It runs on a cardboard box in a dream at this point. It's incredible.
Yeah. Yeah, let's keep it moving. Anthony, what have you brought for us?
Well, I brought for discussion the 1976 arcade game Breakout.
Oh yes, I love this game.
If you're unfamiliar with it somehow, it is the arcade game wherein you control a paddle moving left and right, and a ball is bouncing off of you, the paddle, and moving up to a layer of bricks above. That's usually around the first top third of the screen, and you basically want to keep moving your paddle to stop the ball from falling into oblivion and knock it back up into the layers of bricks. Which would destroy a single brick, giving you points. And you want to just keep it going, keep it moving, bouncing until you have cleared all of the bricks above the paddle. I chose this game to bring in and discuss with ye, the Pinball Commission, because it might be... I was trying to find a thing we could split hairs on the technicality of is it pinball.
Nice. A good angle.
Stress
Strong
test.
impulse.
Got it.
I guess when you take the things that make pinball, that define pinball as a game, in regards to how it's scored, what is classified as a loss, and what is ultimately the objective, they're surprisingly comparable. They're maybe this is Breakout pinball. We discuss.
Wow, this is actually the first time we're really doing it for real.
Yeah, jeez.
And I love it. Yeah, you can also play it forever, which is something I've never thought of before, is that you could hypothetically play pinball forever.
Yep.
Unless a
Right?
table has a final boss, but yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Oh, that's a good point.
Here's
That's
a question.
the thing. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, were bosses introduced to pinball later, or were they always kind of an element? Like, was it something learned from other games?
No, I think they show up. Yeah, they show up later after you have computers.
It's
Yeah. Breakout seems pretty pinball, but also seems like solo Pong.
It is.
Like a
Yes.
one-player Pong.
Well,
Yes, it
it's-
does.
So is Pong pinball by extension?
Oh,
Well,
I mean,
That would make tennis pinball. Tennis would then be competitive pinball.
Here's the
Is it not?
one of the main mechanical differentiations there is that the way you gain points in pinball is by hitting the obstacles. That
Right.
striking them awards you the points, and that mechanical difference I think sets it apart from
Yeah.
something like tennis or Pong,
Okay.
which is actually pretty. There was a lot to not a lot. I mean, we're here on air already, I guess, but there was some stuff to unpack there when I was kind of trying to like formulate this opinion, because the thing about the obstacles in pinball is that they're not inherently good or bad either. If you strike the top of something, it might propel your ball upward, giving you a reprieve from the harsh reality of gravity. Or you could strike the underside of that same obstacle and it will propel you ever faster to doom. So it's not really like they're not really explicitly good or bad in a general sense in pinball. It's a pretty interesting kind of level design, which also kind of feeds into the conversation of the pinball. Is it gambling, or why was it possibly gambling for a while?
yeah. Could you talk a little bit more about why pinball gambling? Like, I'm still unclear as to how one bets on pinball. Is it just points? Like, how many points one gets?
This is
How about
probably
pinball
something
gamble?
that still exists today, but I'm mostly thinking about a time years ago when pinball was outlawed on the premise that it was gambling by none other than Mayor LaGuardia of New York City.
Really?
The airport?
Yes, it was. Yeah.
A sentient airport that you all elected. Good job, everyone.
Legendary airport, Fiorello LaGuardia. He argued that it would be like robbing school children of their nickels and dimes. And so, really though, like this was mostly a stunt because pinball was so lucrative when it started, on its up, that the film industry made a big fuss about it. They got like lobbyists involved, and there was this whole gathering of pinball machines and like axing them and setting them on fire and stuff. There's a purging of pinball for honestly industry purposes, but the reason given was like, oh, it's gambling. It's a gambling
so
thing.
was it competitive with going to the movies? Like, rather than children spending their money at the movies, they were instead going to arcades, and so like it was worthwhile to try and like demonize arcades for that purpose. I'm going down a whole route here
I
that
guess. No,
Yeah.
that
No, I think
sounds
that makes
believable.
sense.
I can also
Kids only get a
Yeah,
nickel
back
per week.
when a dime took you a long way.
Yeah.
So you could do a fancy pinball machine or see one of them talkies.
a dime would get you a double feature, a newsreel, a cartoon, and a short.
Real quick, yeah, the gambling on when you're asking about like how is pinball gambling, it's not like there's a crowd of people standing around you taking the over under on how many bumpers you hit. It's like
kinda what I was hoping
it's
it
like you
was.
put the quarter in and you're gambling in on yourself of how many points you're gonna get essentially.
It's the
right?
just
So
one
it's just
more.
like gambling. Yeah, it's more like a slot machine than like a crap circle or something.
Right, but with a slot machine, you at least have the possibility of earning money as a result of putting money into it. You put money in and you hope to get more out. And this is just like taking your time and enjoyment, right? Like it's just an addictive pursuit, there's a difference between something being addictive and something being a gambling like element, right?
Yeah, they did
I
release.
guess this.
I could see pamphlets coming out of the pinball wizard as the modern day opiate addict.
Right. I'm just saying, like, I understand that, like, people will take whatever route they can to try and outlaw something that they don't actually want around for whatever reason. But I'm just saying that there were other elements or different routes they could have taken that, like, would leave pedants like me, at least, more convinced that they were doing something that they were actually saying they were doing.
Yeah. It makes me wonder why, like, video games, like, in arcades that were specifically designed to, rob you, nothing really came from that. And I think it's because those games didn't especially threaten another industry. This was past the point where kids had their, like, 1 nickel a week for food.
They had 2 nickels.
Yes.
Also,
Yeah, exactly.
I feel like there's a niche crowd that now loves those fucking quarter sucking game hogs because they they prize the hardcore thumb blistering difficulty of a bygone era.
Yeah,
Totally.
like Dragon's Lair or whatever.
Yeah, or like
Is that the one I'm thinking of?
Altered Beast. Altered Beast is fucking.
Oh yeah.
That shit sucks. It's.
Rise from your graves. Sorry, that sound bit rules.
Rise from your grave.
I'm just gonna put it in like 10 times in a row right here.
Rise from your grave. Rise, 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 rise from your grave.
Great.
Sorry. So, back to Breakout. You know what I love about Breakout is when you get the ball up on the top layer of bricks and you just sit back and watch that sucker bounce all around. That feels good.
And that has a direct analog in pinball.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, when you get it up into the like bumper zone and it just stays up there for a while.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's something about
Anthony,
that.
I'm interested to hear more about what you think qualifies something as pinball or not. Like, as somebody who actually knows about game design or mechanics and doesn't just pontificate wildly with no actual thing to say.
Well, that's actually exactly what it is to be in the game space and trying to be a what is it called, like a thought leader. That's not me, but I'm I pretend. But I think I was hoping I could distill something and bring it to you, but unfortunately it's not that simple because I don't think when like pinball was created at its origin story, I don't think a group of people or even an individual sat down and were like, okay, what are the like meta constraints of pinball? Like, forget the materials, forget the shape of the thing, forget this and that. Like, what does it mean to play this game? This is in and of itself an interesting thing, like how in professional sports today rules are often amended, but the amendments often have to comply with like the spirit of the game. Who determines that?
Like
it
the
wasn't
three-pointer
Totally.
Yeah.
in basketball.
Lessening the
Yeah.
shot clock.
Was that exactly? Yeah. Or like in curling, there was there's this really great episode of this Netflix series called Losers that I highly recommend. It was about a curling team that, like, one guy, he, like, blew the lid wide open on old curling rules, and he just turned the game super boring and spent the whole game knocking other people out of the area, and he won.
Turned curling boring? How dare he?
Oh, in a remarkable way. Like the crowd would actively booing him. They were so upset because that strategy meant you had to play to the very end. The full game had to be played, and the only point that would be scored was the final throw. So there were rules. You had to, make rules to be like, this sucks. No one's gonna watch this game.
Right.
No one's gonna play this game. Why are we doing this? So no such like I don't. If there is a body about that determines what is pinball, y'all should track them down. I don't know who they are, but
It's us. You're looking at it.
defining.
It's us.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
It's
think
you.
we just
Yeah.
realized
For-
it is in fact us.
For your consideration, then, defining pinball, it comes down to what if we break down the definition of a game, this is even this is hotly contested. I know Dylan and I off podcasts have spoken about this before, but you can range anywhere from like a very formalist description of like a game, which it must have a win state, it must have a loss, it must have these very real constraints that define it as a game, something closer to like the mathematical terminology. One of my favorite examples that a professor once talked about was that like Minecraft, before there was a dragon at the end, was not, by a formalist definition, a game, as it had no ultimate objective. There was no goal or a true loss state, so to speak. But defining the game and then like putting back into pinball, it's a tricky thing. I'd say like Breakout was the only thing I could reach for that was even close, because I think if I tried to distill it down to its goal, loss state and win state, or like and score acquisition, it's a tricky thing to think of a game whose shape involves you like scoring by keeping a ball or something in play and striking parts of the designed level, as it were. It's a hard one. I don't know what technically classifies as pinball in a more abstract sense, which is why Breakout was one I wanted to talk about, because it was certainly the closest reach. I guess while I'm rambling about this, I'll just go straight into my rating and offer a 4 out of 5 on pinball, because it's not exactly pinball, but it's pretty close. And
Hey, we actually have
you
a
could
name for that
argue it.
rating. That name is Surprisingly Pinball, and I wish you would stick by that.
Surprisingly pinball. Breakout is surprisingly
know.
pinball. You could.
I think I'd give it 5 out of 5 pure pinball status.
I think it's
Wow.
pinball. I agree with Willie. I think it is
I
wholly
think it's
pinball.
100% unfiltered pinball, transcendent pinball.
I think if you had a
5 out
pinball
of
table
5.
with a bar instead of the flippers, it would play. The only difference is that the obstacles in pinball, the bumpers, what have you, they don't disappear. Although sometimes they do, and can be conjured back by executing certain completing certain criteria. So, yeah, I think there's a strong case for 5 out of 5 pure pinball.
Ooh.
in a good way.
I do have a
Breakout is
Breakout is pinball.
Breakout is pinball in the same way that like hot dog is a sandwich.
A hot dog is a
You can argue it, but no one's
No
gonna
one feels
fuck you
good
for
about
it.
it. Yeah.
I'm not trying to get fucked. I'm trying to do what's right. A hot dog is a sandwich.
It's more of a taco, but let's just
A taco is a
Just move it along.
sandwich. No. Listen, I
Are
have.
sandwiches pinball? No, probably not. That doesn't make
I do
any
have a
sense.
question though,
yes.
because you bring up how unique of a style pinball is in terms of the way it's played, the objectives, and I want to ask a question which may help clarify some of these things, which is the leaderboard a part of pinball? And the reason I ask that is because of golf. So if you look at golf and you take out the competitive comparison of scores, which is the only competition in golf. There is no competition in golf based on player-to-player interaction. It is only the comparison of scores. So, if you take away that scoring system, then golf starts to look very similar to pinball. On the flip side, if you put that leaderboard into the stated goal of the pinball game and say that the goal of pinball is to become number 1 on the leaderboard, that is the victory state, suddenly pinball is taking on the shape of a competitive game very similar to golf, just with the scoring reversed.
You make a compelling
Yeah, but in
case.
golf you try to get the ball in the hole, and in pinball you try to not get the ball in the hole.
Nice.
Yeah, fine.
You ever think about
Nice.
that, Jack?
He got you there, bud.
It makes me wonder if maybe we haven't been making pinball less pinball than pinball in fact is.
I think you're right. I think we have been making pinball less pinball than pinball in fact is.
Sorry. Wait. Sorry. Pinball, less pinball than pinball is. Is this a fucking cone? What is this?
Pinball is a flat circle, Amy. No, I think golf is pretty pinball, but in like the flip side of a coin, right? If it's just basically pinball, except the objective is flipped about the whole situation, that's still pretty pinball.
So you're saying pinball is Honest Abe and golf is the Lincoln Memorial.
Uh-huh.
I'm talking pennies, dog.
Oh, wow. That took me way too long to understand. Oh, God.
I didn't get it either.
Yeah, I didn't get it at all, but...
Dylan, sometimes you're just too cerebral.
I mean, there are parts in pinball, right, where, like, the game will say, hey, try and hit the pinball into, like, this little divot or whatever else where it gets held for a moment before, like, being bumped back out, right? Like, not unlike playing
I brought
golf.
that up before.
Okay. Oh, sorry. I was going through a fugue state, and I kind of stopped listening as I tried to figure out. I just, like, astral
great.
projected for 5 minutes, so, you know, I'm back.
Hey, I used to know a guy who does
Here's
that.
a real meta question.
What?
What's the meta question?
How... Okay, check this out. How pinball is this podcast?
Oh, God.
One
I was
out of
hoping we wouldn't have
five.
to get to this so soon.
All right. We can save that for season 2.
We
No,
actually,
but maybe,
you know,
maybe Anthony
we
should...
we have a guest here, right? And so I don't know that we
Yeah.
can answer that
That's true.
because we're too close.
You're right.
But Anthony, how pinball is this podcast?
I think it's 5 out of 5 maximum pinball, and I'll tell you why.
Wow.
Oh, this
Please
is what
do.
I expected.
The lifespan of the podcast being, the primary objective, don't fall into the pit. Keep it up. Keep it in play. And your whole format relies on the evaluation and rating and discussion of topics. To me, that feels a lot like a similar sort of trajectory as like trying to strike the various components on the field. If you're evaluating topics, that's the equivalent of the ball hitting a thing. It probably has a name. I'm clearly not very pinball, but the bumpy thing, a bumper. It makes the big bang sound, and you get the points. That's
Ghosting.
you guys. That's you guys talking on stuff. I think the format and the subject material are very well aligned, and as you established earlier, you're the pinball commission, the final say so on what is and is not pinball. So it's pretty hard to top that. I'm gonna have to give that the maximum pinball.
All right.
Wow. I feel truly honored to learn that we are, in fact, pinball in its purest state in audio form.
It's humbling. It really is.
I can't tell if it's
just before
celebratory or if
we-
it's the calls coming from inside the house sort of thing. Like, it feels also like a threat.
Yeah. Some of these pinball people that I was in the room with earlier, as discussed, are gonna be fuming that we're just like
Oh, they're mad at us.
just throwing around
they
these
don't like us very
accolades
much.
like we set the rules now. They
It's,
dedicated their life to this game.
Well, but see, we're doing basically what I did in college when I decided that I was going to start calling myself a playwright because everybody else at orientation was an actor, and I was like, I'm a playwright. So you claim the unclaimed territory, and these pinball nerds left it wide open. So we stuck our flag in the ground.
True that.
Yeah. Like
Just
the
before-
anti-popes of old.
Just before we move completely away from Breakout, I want to leave you with a recommendation for a very short book called Breakout: Pilgrim in the Micro World by David Sudnow. Sudnow? He's a jazz musician who bought an Atari in like 1983 or so, so back in the day, and became enamored with it. And he wrote this book about Breakout and his experience with it as a zero knowledge on electronics guy, and as a jazz musician. And he draws a lot of like parallels, and clearly his experience as a musician is the lens with which he's examining this thing. He goes crazy, man. He plays the game with like tape on his television to try to like solve the mystery of which way the ball bounces. At one point he drove to like the remnants of the Atari code to like just talk to somebody, and it's a good read. It's pretty short, and it's really interesting. It's just a
What's
weird
that title
sort of
one more time?
Breakout, Pilgrim in the Micro World. That's a
sounds
colon after
awesome.
Breakout.
That's very good.
You've told me about
That's,
this before,
You know, normally I.
and this time I wrote it down.
Nice. Normally I think that reading sucks ass and I don't like to do it, but I'm starting to come around. Maybe I'll give this book a check out. I'll check out this book. What's it called? That's what it is.
Breakout, Pilgrim in the Micro World. If you're feeling more listen-y, there's an episode of 99% Invisible you as the Pinball Commission might be interested in called For Amusement Only. It's an in-depth story of the time when pinball was illegal and the ridiculous New York court case involving a pinball player named Robert Sharp, I believe, who proved to a city council in Manhattan that it was a game of skill by playing in front of all these dusty bureaucrats. A lot of interesting stuff there.
I met those
That
guys.
sounds amazing. And of course, like Roman Mars beat us to the punch. Roman.
I met him. He played the escape room I wrote for.
Oh, really?
Did
Yeah.
Did he whisper sweet nothings about escape rooms to himself while he was doing it?
Maybe. I don't honestly remember. I was drinking a lot
Just coming
those
through the
days.
security system like, how do I get out of here?
I'm at the Palace of Fine Arts, and I can't do the voice. Somebody do the voice.
Neither can I.
Yeah, that you became very Squidward all of a sudden.
It's hard because his voice is deep and dulcet, but also like sort of weird and gloopy.
Yeah, it's gloopy for sure.
It's got
I've
the
thought that
gloop.
before.
All right, let's pull this. Let's break out of this discussion.
Well, I think that is a good a place as any to stop screaming about pinball. Thanks for coming on the show, Anthony. It was so nice to have you.
Thank you so much for having me. I had a blast.
Shall we say goodbye?
Let's do it.
Heck yeah.
1, 2, 3, goodbye.
Bye.
The pinball table that I guess it's a game, not just a table, that I've brought today is the show Riverdale on the CW, which I have been watching under duress. And it is an adaptation of Archie comics that is sexy and spooky. Ensemble cast of criminally attractive actors.
The other thing I wanted to say, Willie, is as your friend and your doctor, you need to cut out your sexy teen intake. This is 2 episodes in a row, and I'm getting worried. You gotta cut it.
Yeah, it's bad for your heart.
You gotta cut that sexy teen intake with an ugly old man with a mustache. Something. You need something.
Cool.
You need something.
Cool.
You need something.
Cool.
You need something.
Cool.
You need something.
Cool.